Hello, Dr. Spears here. It's a little bit dark. I'm in New York City. I'm actually sitting in my car. And this past week, I was working with a pre-med student who had taken the MCAT in January, received their MCAT score. It was not what they wanted. And so now they were reaching out to me for assistance. And so had the breakdown of their scores. I asked them what they were doing to prepare for the MCAT. It was a lot of passive activities with a lot of reading, not doing too many problems. And then one huge red flag was they were not taking full-length practice exams. And that's one thing that you absolutely must do for the MCAT prep is take full-length MCAT exams, because you need to know how you're scoring, where your performance is. Because if you're not consistently scoring where you want to be on your practice exams, how are you going to get that score on the actual test? So that's a huge thing that you need to do when you're preparing for the MCAT, and that would explain why the student didn't get the score that they wanted, because they didn't even know what their performance was going into the MCAT. And as one of my advisors told me way back in the day when I was a pre-med student at Northwestern University, he said this, and I will always remember this to this day: the MCAT is a test you want to take once and only once. So do not sit for the MCAT because you feel rushed, because this is when you have it scheduled to take. Don't do that. This score follows you around forever. It really determines your future in a career in medicine. And I'm not just saying that just to say that, because once you're in medical school, you have to do something called your United States medical licensing exams, also called the boards, also known as your steps. And in the past few years, step 1 has now gone past fail. So you no longer get numerical score. It's just either you pass the exam or you failed it. And you guys don't know what's coming down the road for you. So I'm going to share this with you. So during your 4th year of medical school, you're essentially doing elective rotations. You're doing rotations, elective rotations, most likely in a specialty that you want to go into to practice medicine, and at hospitals or institutions that have a residency program that you want to go into. However, hospitals and these programs only have so many slots available to 4th year medical students for these elective rotations. So how do they decide who is going to get elective rotation? In the past, you had to submit your step 1 score, because that was a numerical number, wasn't pass fail, so it was an actual number. And the elective rotations would say, in order for you to even apply for this rotation, this is the score that you need on your step 1, and if you did not get that score, you cannot apply. Or if you if you have multiple retakes on your step, then you can't apply. So that's what they did in the past to determine. Now that step 1 is pass fail, you don't have that as a criteria or factor to determine whether somebody can get elective rotation. So do you know what the hospitals are using now to determine who's going to get elective rotation during their 4th year medical school? They're going to ask for your MCAT exam. They want to know your MCAT score, and they're actually going to use how you performed on the MCAT to determine whether you get an elective at an institution while you're in medical school, while you're a medical student. Even after you've taken your board, your step 1 licensing exam, that score is now following you around. And so if you want to go into a competitive specialty like orthopedics, dermatology, ophthalmology, guess what? You could be totally out of luck before you even have a chance to even apply yourself based on what you did on the MCAT. So this is why you do not want to take the MCAT just to take it, just to see what you're going to do. And it can't hurt if I take the MCAT. Absolutely no, no, no. That is not the thought process or the mentality that you want to have when you take the MCAT. And plus, as an AdCom, when they're reviewing applicants, you may be asked about what happened with the MCAT if your score is below average or you have taken the MCAT multiple times. And as an AdCom, we're going to think to ourselves, okay, so you're telling me you took the MCAT because you felt you needed to and it couldn't hurt and you really wanted to get into medical school. So even though you weren't prepared, you just took the test. We're going to say, that questions your suitability for a career in medicine. Not that you don't have what it takes, but your judgment. You're going to be a physician. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be in dire search situations where you have to make decisions. And then your decision making is going to be called into question based on what you did or did not do in regards to the MCAT. So that's something else that you need to consider. How is that going to look to AdComs? And plus, when you have multiple MCAT attempts, no one's going to think you're your highest MCAT score. They're going to say, yes, this is our school's official policy on the MCAT, but we're all humans, we're scientists, and we know math and we know numbers. And so what you present to us isn't always going to be accurate. As one of my professors said from grad school is, you're going to leave a trail of data for us to parse, slice and dice, however you want to think about it. So if I have one student who took the MCAT just once and they scored a 515 on the MCAT, I have to say they're a 515 MCAT test taker because that's all I have. Now, if I have another student who took the MCAT and they first time they scored a 506, and then let's say, wow, they did really good, and then they got a 518 the next time on the MCAT. What do you think their actual score is going to be as an AdCom? Some would say, oh, well, you take the highest scores in each section, or you take the most recent MCAT score, so they're a 518. No way are they this 506 that was their first time, their low score or whatever, or oh, we're going to take the average of them. And that's exactly what happens. No one's going to say you're a 506. No one's going to say you're a 518. We're going to pin you more as a 512 MCAT test taker, and that's what it's going to be. So these are things that you need to consider and think about when you're preparing for the MCAT. And the biggest advice I can tell you is only sit for the MCAT when you're most prepared to do well. You have a consistent record of taking full-length practice MCATs and getting the score that you actually want on the MCAT test day. And you do not sit for it if you're not ready, you're not prepared, because there's so much at stake that you're just seeing 1 foot in front of you and you're not seeing a mile down the road how your MCAT score can affect your career in medicine. And that's what I want to help you figure out, see long-term consequences and effects of what you do today as a pre-med student who wants to get into medical school so that you can ultimately become a doctor. So if you have more questions, you need insight, you need tips, you need study strategies, you can find me at drpremed.com. This is Dr. Spears.